However, let's recap from last week. We spoke about the different types of people in their self-introduction, the whisperer who thinks that no one's actually interested, so they go down with their voice when they introduce themselves. So they think that no one really cares. But actually, we know that when we're talking to someone, that someone decided to listen to us, so we can speak up. It's okay. They really want to know who we are. Otherwise, they wouldn't ask. The musician who sees every place as a stage and would never stop talking and would go like, "Whoa, here I am, and there's so much I have to tell about me." But you have to make sure that if you're that kind of guy, that you're not just blowing air through the room. So there should be some content. When you have some content, pull it up and let people enjoy having that time with you. And then the question is to would put every sentence as a question, and it would always be like, "I'm not sure," and you can see it that way or that way, and you know what, and this kind of these kind of guys that we have a lot with introductions. And well, if you ask a question, that's something that should be prepared for giving others an answer and not just post one question after the other. And then the philosopher who comes in a very complicated way and spreads out. It's not that easy. We can just say it like that these are expressions these people use a lot. And this is just a quick reminder, no one's ever hired to be complicated. So that was kind of a quick recap. And I gave you this formula for a perfect introduction, because this is an introduction in a way that you get people interested about you. So you start with you know how, and you talk about what people are doing, and then you go to their pain factor, and only then you come into play because you're solving it for them. You change your life with the interaction. So for me, it would be, you know how students often go to lectures and guest lectures, and then they struggle weaving in the content into the fabric of their life. And I want to give you tools that you can use right away. I want you to take from today elements that you can already use this afternoon. And that's what I'm passionate about. So this is how I would introduce myself. And very often when you introduce yourself in that way, the response would be, "I want to know more about that person," or "This sounds interesting." And this is always a good factor of igniting curiosity. And this is where we're going to go into today. So we're going to start with a quick run through, maybe not so quick, of the skills of social intelligence. Then we take a little break. So there are the breaks today. Then we talk about profiling, which we started last time, but this time I'm going to go deeper and I'm going to give you a self-check. So I want you to identify yourself on that 4 corners of different archetypes. And then we finish with the art of introduction. So these are the 3 main pillars of today's session. And as I said, whenever you'd like me to stop and talk about things more specifically, go right away with it. Okay, so let's talk about social intelligence. Let's talk about the things that make others enjoy having us around, which is basically the definition of social intelligence. It's the ability to navigate in social environments. So it's not understanding others, that would be emotional intelligence. It's about understanding how you should behave that others enjoy having you around, okay? And of course, when we talk about social intelligence, there are 2 things that we talk a lot about, and one of them is status. And we differentiate between internal and external status. So maybe you would like to unmute yourself and just tell me, what do you think is internal status? Yeah, just say it.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, sure. I would say, so visibility speaking, I would say it's the belief we have, what we think.
Good. Yeah, that's good. And what would you say is external status? Oh, I don't hear you. I hope it's only me, because otherwise, if everyone could hear you and only me could not, it would mean that my computer froze again.
No, same with me. I can't hear you, but it is.
Edith, how about you? What do you think is internal status?
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike works.
Excellent. So yeah, so I was saying, so internal status for me is what I think I am representing from to outside world. Who am I? Who do I think I am from myself? And then external status is who others sees me.
Okay. Any other idea? Edith, you started talking.
Yeah, I think abilities actually gave out the idea I had as well. Like internal is like your self-perception of your own value, whereas external is the acknowledgement by the society, by the groups.
Okay.
Validation, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty much to the point. Internal, we say it's confidence, skills, and your belief systems, who you are, and the external status is material status, and of course, title and education is external status, and the people you surround yourself with is external status. But also genetics. So when you do a lot of workout, that's also that you build external status. Of course, when you look at those, you can think of which one is more durable, which one is more important, which one actually makes you. And that's the one that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to spend that all process of going through the 7 skills of social intelligence, all about internal status. And then we have worries and fears. So we don't only have status, and of course, worries and fears are also differentiated between internal and external. And internal are health and belonging and calling, which is very important. It's like the bigger picture, bigger part that's our calling and our story. And we're going to talk a lot about the story today. And external status is wealth, love, contribution, audience. These are all, it's important to understand the differences between internal status, and worries and fears and external. And here's one thing I'd like to share with you. The more you think you need something, the more you have to let go. So the more you hold tight to things, and that's also beliefs, that's a good sign that you have to let go and go back and unlearn and relearn. And that's Ellen Toffler said that the CEO of Google X said the illiterate of the future, sorry, it's not Ellen Toffler, the illiterate of the future are not those who cannot read and write, are those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. I forgot his name. I'm just gonna come to my mind. I'm gonna let you know his name a little later. The insight here is that learn, unlearn, and relearn is a very important skill, and that also means that you have to let go from beliefs and belief systems to relearn and acquire some new thoughts. Okay, let's jump into it. First one, body language. 7% of our communication skills are words, and the rest is body language. And now this year is so interesting because so much of our body language is cut. Right now, we're in this upper body world where you can have no idea what I'm wearing below my white shirt. And then this year, we have a lot of situations where you only see the eyes. And sometimes you just randomly smile at someone passing by, and how do you do this when they would only see your eyes? And if you don't really exaggerate with your smile, they don't see a difference if you're smiling or frowning or if you're looking angry, which creates a distance. And we have to go and practice and stand back in front of the mirror and do different faces. And then we have this year, that's how we, as I said before, we meet each other a lot. And actually, we meet each other a lot like this. And when I look back to the Zoom room, this is what I actually see. And for the purpose of today's lecture and today's experience, a very important part, and we're going to talk about this later, is called show up. And that's literally, you can hide here, you can hide today, but the more you get used to watching your own video, seeing your own face on video in situations where it doesn't matter, the more you feel comfortable and familiar with it when it matters. So when you're in these sessions like today, when you have all your videos off and you're used to not showing your face, and then you have an interview, and it might be a Zoom interview, and you turn your video on for the first time and you see yourself on video, you will not like it. because we don't like ourselves on video. No one does. We had a beautiful session yesterday with the Speakers Impact Network. And one of the things that someone raised is like, I don't like myself on video. So get used to yourself on video. Turn on your videos and look into the camera and look into your thumbnail and start liking what you see, and change if you don't like it in a way that you start liking what you see. Because you have to get very confident with your face in video, because that's how much you reduced when you're facing an interview. So my piece of advice, no worries, I'm not going back and controlling it. This is really just for you. My piece of advice is turn on your video and get used to it. It's not for me. I'm fine with the black boxes, really, but it's for yourself. But you get, as I said, you get confident with liking what you see, which is really, really important. Because otherwise you constantly feel like when it's important, it will make you nervous. You'll constantly feel like, I'm not sure if I look good. But these are not the thoughts you should have in mind when you're in an interview. So go back to the mirror like we did as children. And you also can do this in front of your camera when you go on Zoom and you're not connected with someone. Figure out how you'd like to look at the camera. Would you rather like to look at this? Or would you like to be there or there? How big would you like to have your face? This is so important to think about these details, because that's what the others see from you. So they have your voice and then they have this part of your body, and you want to give everything. Remember, be so good so no one can ignore you. And that's also part of how you make use of your face, your mimic. There are 80 muscles in your face, and most of them are jobless when you communicate. So that's common. But I would say that that's worth working on. So when we talk about body language, we talk about posture, we talk about eye contact. The camera is your best friend. When I look at you, let me go back to the Zoom. So when I look at Maria right now, or now I look at Elise, and now I look at Ineza, and now I look at Edith, and now I look at Hardik. You don't see that I'm looking at you because you don't know where you are, where your thumbnail is on my screen. So when you are in and I hope that my screen's it's good to turn spotlight on speaker, so you have the presentation, you can read it better. When I look at the camera, everyone feels that I'm looking at you. And there's actually also this thing that speakers often do, and I don't know how you know yourself doing this or not, when you use these fillers, these arms and R's. This is when the brain, when you look around, when I don't look at the person that I'm talking to, but I see something else, my brain has to process what I'm seeing. And then there is more information, and you automatically start using these arms and R's. But when I look at the camera and I raise a sharp focus on the camera, two things are happening. One is you feel like I'm looking at you, which is just polite, right? It's just a nice way to look at someone you're talking to. But the other thing is, as I'm razor sharp focused on the camera, my brain has to do nothing but think about what I'm saying. So it doesn't have to buy itself some time, because when I look around, I see that door over there, and my brain processes door, right? Did I share that with you? So when you put the hand on your back of your head, this is the visual cortex, and it overrides almost all of your senses. So processing visual influx images takes a lot of brain energy. When you look at the camera, there's not a lot to process, so you can focus on what you're saying. And you will not have these annoying hours, time that your brain buys to process all this information that's coming. So eye contact means camera contact. Make the camera your best friend. And if that feels awkward, go back to the screens and pick one face that you really enjoy looking at, and that's okay. And then just project that face to the camera and pretend that you're looking at that person. It doesn't matter, because when you look at the camera, everyone will have the feeling that you're looking at them. And then speed is also an important part. I'm very bad at that. I know that I tend to be too fast, so I have to force myself to slow down and make breaks. I was actually 2 days ago, I was in a video coaching, because I'm expert on stages. I'm not so good on video, on TV. And I was in the coaching on TV, so it's very much about how the posture is. Like I don't know how that make a difference for you, But when I'm on the stage, I lean myself towards the audience. But when you're on video, you have to pull your breast up and be like this. Actually, right now I should be talking to you like this. So that was new to me, but also my speed. So that was kind of a good reminder to slow down and take some breaks and give the audience some time to process. And I'm sure if I speak like that, it's easier for you to go with me. So it's totally okay. You can go like, Niki, go slower if I tend to speed up during the rest of this presentation. Conversational agility. What does that mean? It's basically where we go into the art of storytelling. We want to, and that's a very important misunderstanding speakers often do, but also when you introduce yourself, people often do a lot. And that's, I want you to understand me. I want you to know what I'm doing. I want you to understand the point that I'm making. And this is a lot of I mindset. And that's wrong, because even if I am successful in making you understand what I'm saying, you will hear someone saying something this afternoon. And if that's interesting and you understand, you might forget what I've said. So please bear in mind that when you introduce yourself, don't make others understand. When you're in an argument, don't make others get your point. If you want to have a conversation, the purpose is not to make people understand what you're saying. The purpose is to keep the conversation alive. And you keep a conversation alive if you ignite curiosity. The way I introduce myself or the way I share an idea with you should be igniting that wish for you to hear more about it. You should not say, Niki, that's interesting, I've understood. You should say, Niki, very interesting, please tell me more. And when you introduce yourself to someone, that person should not say, I gotcha, great, thank you, goodbye. That person should say, hey, let me cancel the next meeting. I want to have that conversation with you. So how would you articulate in a different way if you want to keep a conversation alive? First thing, we mentioned this last week, I'm going to go deeper. Who am I talking to? Super important. You can miss out. I call it the 75% chance of failure if you only have one way of introducing yourself. So you have to be prepared for the different archetypes, and we're going to go through the different archetypes today. Why should that person care? Do some research, figure out what is important for the person you're meeting. What are the things they care about? What are the things that are important for them? And go directly to that point, because then you get their attention. And then maybe you can surprise them with an opinion, with a thought, or you rewire their brain, give them something to look at from a different perspective in a way that you haven't looked at before. And display passion. Don't be proud of your achievements. Don't show your good results and projects and all that stuff. People are not interested in that, but everyone loves passion. Passion starts everything. And even if you're talking about something I'm not interested, if you're really passionate about it, I will enjoy listening to you because I enjoy seeing passion, such as everyone else. And then there is one thing that's also important that you have to carry into every meeting, and that's not only an interview, but it's actually also in a conference or an event. Come with a social agenda. That still means that you are open to embrace serendipity, but a social agenda can be, I want that person to email me the same day. Or I'm going to this conference and I want to go home with 5 business cards. Or I'm going to this event, I want to talk about the future of education. And when you have this social agenda in mind, you make conscious and subconscious decisions that lead you towards this North Star. And that's your guiding star, because if you know what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, when you are going away from this, you can measure for your own if it was a success or not. I'm sure you've been in many conversations or in many interviews or presentations where after the presentation, you didn't even have a good feeling of, was that good or not? And very often we're strict with judging ourselves. So in case of doubt, we say it wasn't good. But this is just by gut feeling, because we don't have a measurement. We don't have a metric of success. We don't know when we would say this was good. And when you go to a meeting and your social agenda is, I want that person to email me today, you will probably, in a very subtle way, place this wish often enough and clear enough and in an articulate way that that person will email you today. And then at the end of the day, you know that it was a success. But if you don't have this, you don't even know, was that good or not? And if you don't know, was that good or not, next time you don't know what to do differently. And this is kind of when we talk about the linear and exponential organizations. This is the mindset of a data company, because a data company just means that every action delivers information, and that information needs to be captured for future decisions. But if you don't have a measurement to capture anything, you can't alter your future decisions based upon this experience. So social agenda, super important. I hope that makes sense for you. Assertiveness. Your assertiveness is the art of giving feedback and not regretting it. I'm sure you've been in a situation with your partner, for example, with your family, that you shared feedback, and by the response of the person was the first time that you regretted it. You said, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said anything. My life would be less complicated. And now I'm feeling actually more angry than before and upset. So giving feedback is an art. And as a matter of fact, when we give feedback and the response to this feedback is something that we don't enjoy, we didn't give feedback in a way that the other person had it easy to take it. And it's important to see it that way, because otherwise you don't know what to make differently next time. If every time you give feedback, you regret it, you will stop giving feedback. And this is not leading you anywhere. It's not good for relationships of any sort. So you have to continue giving feedback, but you have to learn giving feedback in a better way. So you won't regret it because you're making it good for that person to take feedback. And I'm going to be very conservative here and say men are very aggressive with feedback. So they give feedback in a way that you might know that I'm right, but I'm giving you a hard time understanding it. And women are passive with feedback. So through my behavior, I want you to read what I'm telling you, but you won't read it. So I'm frustrated because I'm acting already and you don't respond to my acting in a way I want you to respond to it. As a matter of fact, my acting is annoying to you. So that doesn't lead anywhere. And passive aggressive means that I'm talking about you to a different person in the room, but I'm not talking to you directly. And they're all the three of them are really bad. And pardon my old fashioned male, female pinpointing. It's of course not true, but we know from experience, it's more likely that men are aggressive and it's more likely that women are passive. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that men can't be passive and women can't be aggressive. I hope that's okay to leave it that way. We want to move on. So the way of giving feedback is basically the art of abundance, the superpower of caring, but not caring too much. Because if you don't care, you won't give feedback, and you give feedback in a casual way, and it's actually annoying. If you care too much, it's very hard to find the right vocabulary because you're emotional. We're humans. So how can you get in a state where you care enough, so not too much and not too little, that you find the right vocabulary? And sometimes it's good enough to think about how important is this to me tomorrow, or how important is this to me in 6 months, or do I really have to make that point? I'm just giving feedback. So I'm giving feedback in a way that it's an offer, a suggestion. And if you take it, good enough. And if you're not, oh, actually also okay. It's just feedback. That works. But what if you care and you can't pretend not to care? Because even if you're emotional and maybe in rage, you can put yourself in this state in 6 months from today. I won't know, because right now you know it. Right now you're emotional. And this is where you need a framework. And I'm not a big fan of frameworks and patterns, but you need them when you have to get away from your emotions. And getting away from emotions often is very helpful. And that framework could be, hey, and then the name. I don't know if it's your intention or not, but when you, and then what it is, it makes me feel, what can we do about it? So what you're doing here is you're saying you're not assaulting someone to doing something intentionally, because very often people do things they don't even know that they're doing this. And then you're not putting too much attention on what that person does, but rather how it feels for you. And you offer a solution together. And you just take a screenshot of this. And then I promise you, when you use that framework, when you are really emotional, it forces you just to fill the blanks. And what you're saying, however emotional you are, what you're saying is something that the other person can take. So That's just a little life hack on being very highly assertive when you're emotional. Humor. And very often it feels like humor is something you can't learn, but of course you can learn humor like everything else. And a good school for humor is improv. I don't know if you're familiar with improv. It's a form of comedy. There is actually a really good book. It's called Improv Wisdom. And the one of the basic maxims of improv if this is true, what else is true? Just to give you one example, it's actually a mindset and not only a way of being funny. But when you look at it in a way of being funny, when you say like, Niki, your white shirt looks actually really ugly on you and there are a lot of stains, and are you sure you're going to wear this in front of us? In a concept of this is true, what else is true, I could respond, you're right. But you know what? Be glad that we're in a Zoom call, but I didn't wash it for 10 weeks and it really smells. So you can think this is funny or not, but you understand the architecture of humor. So these are structures and elements from that book. Say yes, don't prepare, just show up. Being there makes so much of a difference. When you're there all the time, you're top of mind of people. Don't only show up when there's a reason to show up. Start anywhere. Be average, not try to be a pro. We can relate so much with little flaws, so much more with perfectionism than with perfectionism. So it's okay to be average. Pay attention, face the facts, stay on course. Wake up to the gifts is a beautiful one, because how would you respond to things that are not very convenient and might hurt when you see them as a gift? You say like, thank you. A trainer once said that you can use the phrase "thank you, coach" for every challenge in your life, because when you say "thank you, coach," you know that the coach is in good faith, so he means it well for you, but he's testing you. So what are you testing me on? It's just a good way of seeing the world and takes pressure away from your shoulders. It's good to make mistakes. It's act not on way. Done is better than perfect is one of this mottos from design thinking. And take care of each other. Be nice, right? If someone is asking you a question that's hard, that's a great opportunity for you to shine out and give a really good answer. So when you see everything as that person maybe sees it nice, even if that person is not being nice to you, but you can twist the energy. Because if you respond long enough that way, that person stops beating on you. And enjoy the ride. That's what I'm always saying. You should always have a good time. This is your life. So that's about humor. And the same goes with charisma. Charisma is also something that you can learn. We talk about magnetism here. So we spoke about storytelling. We spoke about body language, sexual presence, how you practice your sexual presence. It's very charismatic. Touch, sometimes dangerous in this time of Me Too, and people are afraid of touch. And of course, when we talk about COVID, it's also a different show. But generally, when you're in a safe space, touch creates physical connection. When you're like someone and you're familiar with that person and you know that that's okay and that person's right, go there and touch that person on the shoulder. It already makes so much of a difference. Orienting body and head towards each other. I see so many meetings where people sit like this and then turn their head to the camera and talk like this in a very casual way. Well, what my body language when I sit like this is, anytime I can walk away because I'm already sitting in a direction where I can leave that conversation. But when I'm addressing you, there's only me and you. There's only you for me in this world right now, and nothing else matters. I don't see and hear anything. It's all about you. That's why I'm addressing you. That's why I'm talking to you. And goodwill, warmth. I guess that speaks for itself. The sixth one is approach. There are three ways of approach. One is you go to a person and say, "Hey, I'm Niki." Second one is the person comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm Peter." I say, "Hi, Peter." And the third one is Maria introduces Peter to me. The thing with the second and the third one, it's based upon hope. And you don't want to make life decisions based upon hope. The interesting thing with conferences and events is maybe not on Zoom, but in real time, real life, in person. People come there to have a conversation. Now, everyone comes there to have a conversation, but at the same time, people fear to ignite a conversation. They have like this anxiety approaching someone and said, "Hey, can we talk? You look interesting." So bear in mind that everyone else who's coming to that event has the same intention, and that's having a conversation. And having that in mind makes it maybe easier for you to approach someone and not wait for someone to approach you or a third person to introduce you. And what works is you can ask a third person to introduce someone if you know that that third person knows that guy or that woman that you like to talk to. That's okay. That's an active decision. So here's a little trick, how people stand at events and conferences. And basically you want to go to groups of 2 and groups of 3. You don't want to go to the person standing alone, because you would be the best friend of that person. And no one ever goes to a conference just to have one conversation. You want to have more conversations. So ignore the person standing alone, maybe with the mobile phone. Look at the groups of 2 and the groups of 3. Groups of 4 are having shallow conversations. There's no depth. That's okay if that's your intention. But if you want to talk about something and bring in a topic, only groups of 2 and groups of 3 are relevant. And now there is ways of people standing to each other when they're having chats. And that's both for groups of 2 and groups of 3. And one is that we call an open tool. So they stand like a V, and you can go there and close it. You can go there and can I join you? And they will say yes. If 2 people are looking at each other, having a conversation like this, you can go there and ask if you can join. And they will say yes, because they're polite. But at the same time, they won't even recognize when you're leaving, because they are having a conversation where there's no room for a third person. And for you, it's terrible. For you, the evening is gone. You feel like, oh, I have to go. This feels so bad. And the same is with groups of 3. They can stand like a triangle, or they can stand like a V, and they would leave an open space and you can join. But when they stand like a triangle and you see it's a closed 3, don't even go there. You have to make sure that what works for you and is good for you, and don't force yourself into situations, or don't bring yourself into situations where you don't feel comfortable. 7th is default setting. That's my favorite one. Default setting is basically your reset button, where you know this works for me. What are the things that I'm talking about here? Is 1, the fear of failure. We have this weird relationship with failure. We think if we make a mistake, we are a failure, which is not true. If we make a mistake, we have just learned something. And just put this, like, rewire your brain upon everything that's a mistake, just taught you this doesn't work for me. And you have to know both. The only experience that's a bad experience is the one that doesn't tell you anything, because that's waste of lifetime. But every experience that works fine tells you this works for me. And every experience that does not work fine tells you right now, this one does not work for me. Now I'm saying right now, this one does not work for me, because it doesn't mean that in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a year, it still won't work for you. But for that moment, in that environment, it didn't work for you. And that's data points. Remember, I said act like a data company. Both are data points. And if you see what does not work for me as a data point, there is no fear of it, because it's important to know what doesn't work for you. That we need this to survive. Don't fight procrastination with motivation. I see this a lot. People who are delaying everything and procrastinating, and then they're hyper motivated. That's just like if you want to have energy and eat sugar, it pushes your energy up there, and then you have a bad drop. Don't fight procrastination with motivation. Don't gain energy by eating sugar. If you know who you are and who you want to be consistent with that. Integrity is the way of behaving when no one's listening and watching. Very important to know that and be that. And then we have the archetypes of people who say, I didn't know, no one told me that. This happened to me. I call these victims, and I'm sure there's no victim here in the room. So we talk about the people who say, I'm taking charge of my future. And this is a good thing, right? Despite Corona, or despite COVID, despite lockdown, I could do this. The problem with this is, what I like with it is it puts yourself in the driver's seat. And that's a good thing. The problem with this is it's constant energy. Because whatever comes to your life, you always have to think about, what can I do despite? What does that mean for me, and how can I will always stand up and wipe the dust from my shoulders? And when you understand the concept of law of attraction, if you have this mindset, there will be constantly something happening to your life where you have to go through this, where you have to stand up again, even though things are happening to you. So the next level of development is through me. And through me basically means you understand principles and laws. Pardon the title here. So if you understand principles and laws for Corona, you say, what could I only do because of COVID? What could I have not done if COVID wouldn't have happened this year? And this is where you take, it's basically like the mixed martial arts. You take an energy and you don't stop it because you're strong. You take an energy, you flip it, and you make it work for you. And that's a lot easier once you get the twist. It's a lot easier because you don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to understand, what does this mean for me, and how can I take this as an asset? How can I take this as an opportunity? Because without that, I couldn't have done this. Without COVID, we might not see each other today. And I think it's cool that we're spending this morning together, because probably there wouldn't have been a budget to fly me in and pay me a different salary for speaking in front of you. So that's cool, right? That's only happening because of COVID. And of course, it would be nice to meet, but that just limits down. But with that situation where we just meet virtually, the only thing we need is an internet connection. And I hope a stable computer. Prioritize certainty over skills, right? So certainty is an internal state, skills are external acquisition. And very often people are chasing skills to get certainty. The more you learn, and that's, the Greek knew that already. The more you learn, the more you know you don't know. So you never, and I feel like I lived this very privileged life, spending so much time with people who see things others don't. This is not good for ego, because every day, like yesterday again, I had a conversation about atoms and I didn't even know they exist. Every single day I hear something people are working on that shows me I have no idea. I don't know anything. So you never acquire certainty through acquisition of skills. You have to have a good internal state. Update your peer group. You become the average of the 5 people you hang around with, which is bad news, because of course it's hard to say no to friends and it's hard to say no to people, but that's something that's really important. You have to make decisions, conscious decisions, who you surround yourself with. And that also means saying no to someone who might need you. Because if you constantly say yes to people who need you, where are you charging up? And no one cares about you when you're down. No one comes back and says, hey, how can I help you if you help them, right? Everyone's in their own world, in their own bubble of problems and fears and worries, and even more in this crazy time. So you have to make sure that your people that pull you up, and then it's okay also to help others. It needs to be going in both directions. But it's important to be around people who are better than you to make you better. And it's also important to around people who can learn from you, because if you want to understand something, you have to teach it. Both is important, but you have to be conscious about it. So your financial thermostat is basically what you think you are worth. And you can take your paper and write down a number, what you think you will make next year. And I want you to do this right now. I want you to go to your notebook and write down a number, what you're gonna make next year. Or the first year of your job, if you think next year you're still studying, write down that number. And now I want you to double that number. And you might need a calculator. Bilitis, are you saying something? I don't hear you.
Okay.
Now it works.
Yes, Niki. My internet connection broke. So could you please repeat the point
task
on reset your financial thermostat?
The task is write down a number on the paper, what you will earn next year, the whole year. And now double it. And now that you've doubled it, double it again, and then double it, please, a total of 10 times. So 9 more times double the amount. And then write in the chat what's the number that you have there. If you double what you make next year 10 times, what's the number that you sum up? Just write it in the chat.
Thank you.
And I don't see any number yet, but I know it's a lot of calculation. You might need your phone or calculator for this. 3.6 million. Okay, first number. So Anne will make 3.6 million in 10 years. Who else is another 3.6 million? You're aligned. So I'm 53 people in the room. I'm curious what's the highest number. Let me tell you something. I did this with the Moonshot Pirates, which is a program designed for 16 to 18-year-olds. So I had the 16 to 18-year-old, and the highest number I got there was 51 million. So the lowest number was 250,000 though, but the highest one was 51 million. And we're at 6 million. Let me see if you are daring greatly, if you're going higher than the 16-year-old. 3.6. Bam, 491,520,000. Very good, Marie. 983, Mailund, and 40,000. We're hitting the billion. 78 million krona. Let's see a few more numbers, but I like 983 million. I like it already. Maybe there is one hitting the billion. I'm curious if there's one. Okay, Edith, what is the local currency? That's a lot of zeros. That's a trillion. Is that right? Million, billion, 1.4 trillion. That looks like a whole lot of money. Okay. Still a lot of money. It still feels like 2 billion or almost $3 billion. Yeah, good. Keep it coming. 18 million. So as these numbers are floating in, I really want you to do this little math thing. Who of you think that this is a reasonable amount of money they will earn in 10 years from today? Or who of you think this is crazy a lot of money? I will not make this amount of money in 10 years. That's your financial thermostat. So let me tell you how you're going to make this amount of money. So Bilite says 18,432,000 euro. It's very easy, Bilitis. You are going to change the life of 18,432,000 people in 10 years. And if you're going to do this, this is what you're going to earn. So the thing is that you can never betray yourself, but you have to put it in context. And whatever number you've put in here, if you say like, okay, Julie, I'm going to change the life of almost 80 million people in 10 years, this is what you're going to get paid for it. If you put that number in context, you just reset your financial thermostat, because I'm sure making 80 million sounds like a lot and not unreachable, but changing the life of 80 million people basically just means you have to identify a problem. If you solve it, the life of 80 million people is better. And we don't live in a scarcity of problems. So I'm sure there are tons of problems where you know that 80 million are suffering from this. And it feels reachable. It doesn't feel too far away anymore. So if you reset your financial thermostat, write down a number that you want to make next year and just double it right away. And then put it in context and said, okay, this is the amount of people that I'm going to impact with my activities next year. And my promise is, if you look at that number every day and you're conscious about the amount of people of which life you plan to change and impact positively, this is how much you're going to make next year. Whatever the number is, if it's $1,000 or $1 million, either way, you're going to be right. It's your choice, but you have to put it in a context. Otherwise, it just feels like betraying yourself. And of course, we can't betray ourselves. So that's the financial thermostat. And of course, when I talk about the default setting, about who we are and who we want to be, very often we bend ourselves into a version we don't want to be, but we think this is what others expect us to be. This is what that situations expect us to be and how we're supposed to act and respond. But the more you bend yourself into a version that's not you, the more you attract situations you don't feel comfortable with. And the more you attract people you don't want to hang around with. And that's actually what happens to most of us. We're in jobs we don't like. We're in peer groups we don't enjoy hanging around with. And that's just the result of us being not who we are. But the more you are the person you want to be, the more attract people you want to hang around with. And the more you attract jobs you enjoy doing. So you have to start with yourself. You have to know, who do I want to be? And today, I hope I managed to get you closer to the answer of this question. But the honest truth, bad news is that's a journey. That's not something that you know today and be tomorrow. But a very good ritual, and I'm doing this every day. When I go to bed, I ask myself, was I the person I want to be today? Was today a good snapshot of myself? And when you ask yourself this question, this tiny little question before you close your eyes every day, you automatically get conscious about A, who you want to be, and B, you become that person, because you will not accept missing a day being who you want to be anymore very soon. Because you just realize today was one day of my life who I wasn't who I want to be. I'm not accepting this anymore. And it's good to become conscious of who you want to be. And of course, it's good to be consistent with that information, because you're not going to be happy when you go to bed and you have to be honest to yourself that that wasn't me. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And life is so much better if you know who you want to be, because you get conscious and safe with things like saying no. Saying no might be the hardest thing to say, because you want to be nice. You want to, people ask you something, you say yes, but that might steer you into an inconvenient situation. It's okay to say no, right? And if you're comfortable with saying no in certain situations, it's also okay to do things even though you don't want them to do, but to doing someone a favor. So at a higher level, it's good to do it, even though at the granular level, you might not enjoy it. But that's the overall picture. And if you come to that stage, you also come to the stage where you say to yourself, hey, I actually only do what I want to do. And that doesn't mean that by your actions, other people are having a bad experience. It just means that on a meta layer, you make decisions that are good for your life. But that only happens if you know who you want to be and you ask yourself, was today a good snapshot of myself?